coming to this press conference. We have just heard the budget, and I think people across Guyana who've listened to the budget might still be trying to figure out what really happened in the National Assembly. They heard the Minister of Finance said that he wanted to stimulate growth and restore confidence in Guyana, particularly confidence in our economy. That's the name of his budget speech. Yet, when they would have listened to the measures announced by the minister, the measures are not going to restore confidence, nor are they going to stimulate growth. So there is a huge disconnect between this budget, its orientation, its stated objective, and the policies, programs, and measures put in place. Huge disconnect. And if there are two words that I can use that I have heard people mention from the time they exited that chamber, the two words were anti-development and anti-poor. I want to take you through the measures. There are so many things that we can say about the budget, but I will leave that for a subsequent press conference. But I just want to take you through the productive sectors. And can anyone tell me a single measure that is designed to enhance productivity or production? In the rice sector, we heard one sentence from the Minister of Finance. In the sugar industry, he said they're putting in $9 billion in subsidy, although the Prime Minister in New York had announced that the budget would have $12 billion in it, and he said it will be $9 billion. In mining, there were no measures to assist the mining sector. Not a single budgetary measure. He spoke about increased production this year and about the 2 new gold mines that came into being, but both of them were projects developed under the PPP. So there's nothing for mining, nothing really for sugar. In fact, he's giving less than what the Commission of Inquiry suggested and the Prime Minister said their budget will have. Nothing for the rice industry. Very little for any other sector of the economy. Nothing for construction. Nothing for manufacturing. Nothing, very little for tourism. In fact, minimal amongst tourism, because his primary tool for bringing more visitors was the cleanup of the city, $200 million in this year, on top of the $300 million spent last year to clean up the city. That should supposed to be a big attraction. So we have not seen any measure to stimulate production. Those are the sectors that have earned and are earning in the country. Under the green economy, what were the initiatives we heard about? Building more public facilities in the park, implementing the plan of the PPP to expand our national protected area system, and putting $40 million in this year's budget to start a building for the EPA. That is all about the green economy. And then, relatedly, we heard him mention the Amila project. So Amila went from last year being a criminal endeavor in last year's budget to their reassessing Amila. But there is one thing in this budget that I hope that every citizen would listen to carefully. It's what they plan to do in the electricity sector. The Minister of Finance said that there is a $50 million project that they currently have, that they're negotiating a power purchase agreement for at the Hope Solar Farm. This project is being developed by a supporter of the government, and that they plan to buy power at somewhere about half of the price of that GPL is generating at. Now, he gave a figure for GPL generating cost per kilowatt hour of 28 cents. That figure is not just wrong, but it is outrageously wrong. When fuel prices were high in 2012, the figure was about 19 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. We were going to buy power from a miler at 10 cents per kilowatt hour, half of the 2012 numbers for generating power. The price of fuel has tumbled. I do not believe it's more than 14 or 15 cents now per kilowatt hour to generate electricity in GPL. Yet the minister said 28 cents. This is, I believe, to justify buying power from this individual which will stick this country with huge costs beyond that of, contemplated through the construction of the Milers Fall. So that is something that we have to, it's easily tracked down. The media could go and ask GPL, what's your cost of generation? The Minister of Finance said 28 cents. And what was the proposed cost to buy power from a miler? It was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. If it's 28 cents, then we wouldn't save $2 billion in the 20 years from a miler. We'd save close to $4 billion US if the cost of power. That's wrong. So it is something that was so glaring that the people of this country, I believe, need to pay careful attention to. But maybe I should just focus for a moment on the measures themselves, because there will be enough time to talk about the other things. Now, clearly you will see that these measures are not designed to help poor people. Poor people. The pension was increased by a paltry sum, a tiny sum. In fact, $1,200. And what the minister did, he sought to add what took place last year to this year's increase. So he will get 39%. You would recall that we spoke about this. The pensioners have lost in a net sense last year. The increase this year cannot compensate them for the loss of the water subsidy and the electricity subsidy. Our pensioners are poorer under this government than they have been under the PPP government. Secondly, we saw the increase in public assistance. Again, a paltry sum of money. We have seen no increase for wages and salaries. We've had an increase in the threshold that will not make a big difference in people's lives. So this budget has absolutely nothing for poor people. Those were the areas where one would have thought that the government would seek to transfer more resources to the most vulnerable groups in our country. On the other hand, I see a great deal of special interest in this budget. Special interest, new car Importers, and there are few of them, have benefited. New car people, that for vehicles and for tires. Some companies, there is one company particularly that will benefit significantly from this measure on the removing or graduating the excise tax on alcohol. That is, again, special interest. I've seen special interest in treating the foreign service differently. These are all issues relating to special interest. So, if I had to look at what people, how this would change people's lives, in fact, Guyana is, people's lives would probably be less, the good life can't start with this budget. People would have a retrogression in their life and their benefits. There are other ominous signs that the minister has announced but has not gone into specifics for. He said, I will amend a raft of legislation to increase taxes and fees for several services. We are yet to know what those will be. But I believe that there are considerable number of services that are enjoyed by Guyanese. Those will be increased, and there's absolutely no transparency about it. Every one of you in this room and across the country now will be faced with something that we had in the past. It was called, there was this ubiquitous tax compliance. You had to, if you wanted to travel, you had to get a tax compliance. If you wanted any service from the government, you had to get a tax compliance. You had to go through a torturous process. We have seen the return of the tax compliance to Guyana, so that every single one of you here in this country, anytime from now on you have any dealing with the government of Guyana, you have to go, first of all, go into the GRA and get a tax compliance and satisfy them that you have paid all your taxes. This is going to be very, very hard for people, not just rural people, but hinterland persons who will now have to probably travel long distances to come to Georgetown to get this certificate, and before they get any service, including routine services from the government, like applying for a license, etc. This is a big brother kind of approach, once again. The GRA will now have a primary part in all of our lives, once again. This used to happen in the 1980s. It is a return to an old Burnhamite approach to controlling people and controlling their access to service and their growth in income. I anticipate that after listening to this budget, that the private sector in this country will lose further confidence in our economy, that there is nothing in this budget to help to stimulate them, to help them. In fact, more pressures on the private sector. I anticipate that there will be greater capital flight. I anticipate that all the numbers, the rosy picture painted by the Minister of Finance regarding our balance of payment and the strength of our banking system, that they will deteriorate and that we will not achieve any of those targets because we will lose confidence, we lose more investment. This budget cannot stimulate investment. It has no new measure to stimulate investment. So on one hand, we'd lose the people and lose their enthusiasm and their capital, those who promote growth, and on the other hand, it will not alleviate or help anyone, poor people. In fact, it will bring greater hardships. Just imagine banning used tires. How many people will be able to afford new tires now. Most of the tires that are used in our system are used tires. Now, from a safety perspective, that you need to probably look at the quality of the used tires. But when you ban them completely, you're transferring money in the pockets of the few people who are importing new tires, and then you're taking money out of the pockets of those people, ordinary people, who can only afford used tires for their vehicle. So the cost of the tire now, 4 new tires, if you have to put on your vehicle, will be probably about 10-15% of the cost of acquisition of your vehicle. And furthermore, vehicles beyond 8 years now will be banned. So a lot of vehicles that were coming into this country, and people were older, they cost a bit more in foreign currency for the country because they're not as efficient, etc. They're a bit more polluting. But at least a section of our population that is low maybe middle income, low middle income, poor, could still afford something to drive. Now they are not going to be able to, with the banning of new vehicles that are 8 years old. I'm not going through this in any ordered fashion. I'm just selecting a few of the things that are so blatant, that are so anti-poor. No increase income for poor people. All the measures are designed to increase fees, taxes, banning things that are their use, etc. And on the other hand, no stimulus for the economy, but a few selective measures to give benefits to a few people. Few people. Those who produce alcohol of a certain vintage, the new car dealers, etc. This budget, as I said before, it's anti-development, it's anti-poor, it will never achieve the outcomes that are laid out here. I'm not going to, because I have a press conference maybe later in the week to deal with the budget in its entirety, but I'll stop there and ask you if there are any questions.
Sir, what is so wrong with tightening up the tax system to allow people to prove that they are paying? That they are paying?
Is this tightening up the tax system, or is it designed how, if you live in Paramakatoy and you want your license, and would you come to Georgetown to have to get a tax compliance certificate? That is what I'm arguing for, that it will put undue burden on the populace. It is designed not, it's a lazy way of going after tax evaders, to pass the burden onto everyone, including poor people. Including poor people. It's a lazy way of collecting taxes. You pass the burden to everyone, rather than targeting those, because there are people that you can target for audits, etc., that are big tax evaders. But on the other hand, we heard that they're giving directions to the commissioner to settle tax cases for huge companies that will bring paltry sums into the treasury, and they will get the huge write-off, similar to what's happening at the city council. The write-offs for friends and family. Actually, one supporter got a $19 million write-off to an NDC, owed $22 million in taxes. The NDC was directed to collect only $3 million in the settlement of the claim. So they're not targeting the large people. On the other hand, they're settling tax claims for supporters. And then you put a burden on the entire country. So the people living in these riverine areas, anyone in Guyana, poor people, etc., they have to now go to the GRA, trudge into that office there. And I don't even know they had the capacity to handle all of those people. every time they try to apply for a license to sell in a shop, a license to buy a vehicle, your fitness, anything that you want to do that requires government license. This is it. Yeah.
Contrary, we also see a huge emphasis on raising more revenues. We see even gun licenses being, the prices for those ones really high, from anywhere from 5,000 to 40,000, and other revenue collecting measures. What's your view on that?
Gun licenses, I don't have a problem with gun license increases. It's the other increases that are to come. When the minister said, I will amend a raft of legislation, he listed a few to increase the fees, etc. So I expect vendors and factory owners and people who fitness and a whole range of things will go up.
Yeah, but when you compare the focus on increased revenues compared to what seems to be big public spending, like on the old age pensions and salary increases, what is your take on that? We have more, it would seem, focus on collecting money than spending
Well,
in certain key areas.
Well, yeah, the president had said that they would focus on collecting more revenue. I don't have a problem with spending. I don't want to deal with the macroeconomics of the budget at this time. But here, the minister said that last year, we had a deflationary situation in Guyana, where inflation was negative, so that's deflation. Countries around the world fight deflation because deflation, like Japan, has been in deflationary mode for many, many years. Deflation is, for them, worse than inflation. They're trying to get inflation in the economy. In this case, the minister launches a budget, and then he boasts about the budget deficit, the fiscal deficit, being below that of 2014, when we didn't have a deflationary situation. What should have happened is that the expenditure should have increased in this year's budget because we had a deflationary situation last year, to ensure that that doesn't reoccur. That doesn't reoccur. But that is something I probably deal with at a subsequent time. There's a lot of repackaging. That is why I did not talk much. The minister spoke about the billions that they're spending on infrastructure. That's one of the plans. And guess what he lists? He lists the road on the East Coast. They're negotiating with the Chinese company to pave the highway on the East Coast. They should have completed those negotiations, because you would recall that there was a public tender under the PPP, and that the contractor won the tender for $47 million. It was the lowest bid, a Chinese company, and we had secured the loan already. It's not new. He spoke about the Parika to Vreeden Hoop Road. That is a project that is funded by the CDB that was awarded under the People's Progressive Party. He spoke about the bypass road, that we had started that with the Indian line of credit. He spoke about the $15 million on the Citizen Security Program, and goes in a long explanation of its components. And that project, with all of those components, was approved under the PPP, was negotiated under the PPP, and Ramjatan just showed up and announced it. There are the Hinterland program. We had several programs to computerize the hinterland, running into billions of dollars. It's repackaged here. We had a program for the development of the village economy in every area that would have cost billions of dollars. They're putting in part of the money. That money, or some of the money there, is coming from the Norwegian program. It's a Norwegian program that we've left in place that is funding a lot of the hinterland hinterland development. You notice he mentioned about the giving school uniforms. School uniform has been a thing that in the past, he says we're spending 400 million on school uniforms, and that was there in the past. He mentioned this 3B going to 5Bs, but none of that. Is this 3B initiative a voluntary initiative? Or is it funded by the state? And if so, how much money is in the budget? He didn't say that because it's not. It's some businessmen buying a couple of buses here and there. But how can that substitute for the $1.67 billion that they took away from the families? I can go through, when I look at this, the budget, and listen to some of the things here, I can almost tell you when and where we negotiated these loans or they are part of our program. The electronic transaction legislation, electronic signature, privacy legislation, all came from the government, the past government. The e-government initiative, the integrated software, they plan to put all of our services online. That was there before. Every single area, you notice the micro and small enterprises unit he mentioned, but they haven't put money into it. It's about training. And by the way, I think the minister had a Freudian slip when he spoke about youth. They are so distant from anything to do with youth development. He spoke about training of some young people. But this is what he said, Mr. Speaker, apart from youth unemployment, this budget seeks to promote youth health and safety, sport and culture. So they are really promoting youth unemployment. He is right about this because there's nothing to promote. It's on page 60 of his budget speech. He's right about it. It's a Freudian slip. There's nothing in there to promote employment, not only for young people, for anyone. And then we heard these figures about Go Invest last year, stimulated $89 billion of investment and created 8,000 jobs. Where were these jobs created? In what sector? It would be interesting to see what sector they were created in. This budget has nothing to stimulate private sector activities. Yeah.
Mr. John, you had an alternate. You former finance minister, former president. This government would have been better off if they did what in investing in this budget.
They would have been better off had they had a serious discussion with us to apprise them of where we were taking the country. Had they followed systematically our plans to move the country to a higher level. We identified 7 or 8 new growth poles for Guyana. Every single budget, we put in place measures, policies, programs in place to give effect to those new sources of revenue apart from trying to fix the traditional sectors. We sought to expand benefits to people in a real way, in a sustainable way. The approach to us, I heard the minister said we chose to stay away, but he did not say that we wrote him asking him for certain information that would have allowed a proper budget to be presented, a framework that recognizes the reality of the world. Here is it the Minister of Finance saying, the world in 2015 went into trouble. 2016 will be bad. Globally, it's forecasted to encounter problems. China will continue to grow slowly. The US would stop quantitative easing and therefore interest rates may go up. There is a low demand for much of our exports for commodities, and it will affect Guyana. And then simultaneously, he said, and he spoke about 2015 too, he said, in the latter half of the year, we restored confidence. We did well. You know, the first half of the year, everything was bad under the PPP, and then we did well, but in spite of the global situation. And he's saying that in 2016, we're going to grow by 4 point something %, and we do well. Where is the connection? Where is the connection? And we can't do well because the 2 new gold mines are coming on stream, because they seem to be banking a lot on that. And we can't do well because they would not start pumping oil. In fact, as he pointed out, it's an exploratory well that is going to be drilled. They continue drilling the exploratory well. So where would we see this buoyancy in? I believe that the numbers are inflated. That the numbers are inflated, and it doesn't recognize the reality of the world. So that's what I think. If we had a budget, I would have advocated, as I did last year, to run a larger fiscal deficit, because it's not going to be inflationary. If they're targeting with a 4.7% deficit, a 2% interest rate, and there is deflationary pressure right across the world. Fuel prices have come down. And then why couldn't we run a bigger deficit and pump the money into a stimulus package, a real stimulus package for our private sector, and more benefits to the sectors, that the vulnerable sectors? That is what we would have argued for. Yes.
So you haven't spoken on government's lowering of fuel. You have said that it should not have been included in budgetary allocation, but should have been analyzed periodically so that the
Yeah, sure. Okay.
the populace gets better. Could you explain that?
That is, what I said is that because I heard that the measures that brought benefit to people were so sparse versus the measures that were bringing additional hardships, that they were looking around for things to see in the budget to announce as measures that would sound as though they're bringing additional benefits to people. So my argument was that fuel prices fluctuate up and down in a given year. The tradition has been that when prices fall, we would probably push up the taxes a bit, but then we would get Gael to lower the price at the pump almost immediately, so that the private companies did not get a windfall. Because one time I looked at this, and the prices had fallen by, I think, about $20. And in 2 weeks of not adjusting the price at the pump, a private company made $61 million more by simply delaying the adjustment at the price of the pump. And where did the 61 million come from? It came from ordinary people. So we often use GAIL not as a state company to make money, but as a regulatory body to ensure that once the prices fall, they adjust the local price at the pump almost immediately, so that the others would follow suit, the private companies. Now, if he is saying that this is only going to be done at budget time, what happens between now and the next budget? Prices may go up or may fall further. Are we going to wait until the next budget to announce this as a measure to reduce the price at the pump? And so they should have announced this almost immediately. But they allowed the private companies as well as the state oil company to rake in large sums of money on the back of the consumers. And that is why I'm opposed to it being a budget measure. It should be an ongoing measure. When the prices move down, we should benefit from it at the pump almost immediately. And when it moves up, the prices should go up back. was how it was all the time.
But then we also had local government elections in just under 2 months. Given the anti-people, anti-development budget that you said this is, do you expect it to be reflected at the polls?
The people have to make up their minds in this country, because I guess the spin machine will start it. The spin machine in the Kaichor News, and that's even more pro-government than the Chronicle now, will start doing the spin and show how wonderful the budget is. But soon people will start feeling it in their pockets. You as the stevedore, you as the taxi driver, as the person that's working in the street or on Regent Street, or the vendors, or the pensioners, or those who are enjoying public assistance, or ordinary folks across this country, or those in the sugar industry, or the rice industry, or in bauxite for that matter, the ordinary people. How is your life better because of this budget? Just ask them one question, and that reality will come home soon. How is your life better because of this budget? Is it going to create more jobs for you? Would it cause your salary to increase? Are you going to be taking home more money at the end of the month? And you will get a resounding no. And that's the ultimate test. And then go and ask the people who are investing in mining and forestry and the manufacturers and the rice industry and every other sector. What did the budget? Are you excited? Has this budget given you more? And their answer will be no to. So that's the litmus test. It's not what Jack Deo says. It's not about local government elections. It's about those people out there. Ordinary people, the business community, and others who are looking for this anticipated stimulus package that we've heard so much about, and where is it? It's not stimulus. They're all the billions that they're spending in infrastructure. It's coming from a lot of old projects, the billions of dollars. Imagine it was so the last budget, I can't even find the words to describe it, so dishonest, that the last budget, the specialty hospital was a criminal venture again, that they shouldn't go ahead with. And this government has now announced $1.9 billion of this budget will be for the specialty hospital. Isn't that criminal? And then the way it's being done too. It's the way it was done. It's, the whole issue that we have about how it's done. So that is criminal. Yeah.
So do you anticipate public transportation and taxi costs to go up in wake of the...
If you have to buy new tires, if you can't get a new vehicle that's more than 8 years old, you have to buy a new one. The cost of acquisition will be high. I want to see how many ordinary Guyanese can afford the new vehicles now. Then what do you expect? It will go up. It has to go up. It's a normal thing. It will go up. Transportation costs will go up. And this, what's the 65-year-old will enjoy, yes, free licenses now, yes. Free driver's license, yes. Yes.
I mean, how to catch so just to clear up, first question is just to clear up something. You said that there has been a lot of repackaging in this budget, yet you noted that the government would have been better off if it had followed some of PPP's programs and projects. Yeah. So I can't see, just want a clarification there between the repackaging and still asking them to follow what was in place before. And you spoke about some ominous signs. Could you just point out, this is a scary thing to say, so could you just point out too so that I can
Okay,
note
sure,
down?
sure,
One more
yeah.
thing, is there any measure at all in the budget that you can say it's good for the people of Guyana?
Okay. So, one, let's talk about the repackaging issue. It is, you have a lot of the projects that we had in place to achieve a strategic objective. But the measures are very important too. A budget measure is very important. And it's in times of global crises, you have to have a national response through the budget. The budget framework that we left from the past cannot be the budget framework now, given what's happening globally and given what has taken place locally. We believe that the government's focus is on just doing the things that the PPP left, some of the things, and collecting more taxes and spending. We believe that there has not been enough focus on helping the sectors that generate wealth. And that is more important than anything else because it is what sustains medium and long-term growth. So whilst it does have a lot of our policy or projects that we had in place already, it does carry those. But there is absolutely no focus on stimulating the traditional sectors. Let me give you a few examples of what we did and what we would have done now in the rice industry. It will not cost the country a cent. If the Minister of Finance had said, I am going to direct the central bank to work with the commercial banks, give them the room to renegotiate loans for people in troubled industries, in the mining sector as well as the rice industry, who now have are at the risk of losing their homes, their tractors, their entire productive capacity because they fell on hardship. He could have announced a measure like that where they would have given the commercial banks the permission to do this and save large numbers of people from going into bankruptcy, from losing their productive assets, and would have kept them producing. So that would have been beneficial to the country. Secondly, he could have said, we are going to waive the lease fees for the miners, for up to small and medium scale miners. We're going to waive the lease fee for lands that they hold. And we are going to establish a sliding scale for the royalty payment for small and medium scale miners so that they can better adjust to the hardships they are faced with. He could have done the same thing for the rice farmers who are now working in the MMA schemes and other government schemes by reducing the lease. That would help people. I can go through a long list of these measures. You don't want me to. But that is what I meant. That is what I meant. Simple things may not cost the government that much in revenue, but could help the productive sectors of our economy. That would have helped the productive sectors of our economy. Could have extended the private cane farmers are going to be faced with a lot of hardships. Could have extended some help to them from a tax perspective. That is not revenue from the Treasury. So this is what I meant. The ominous signs are about this return to command and control. An old policy, a policy from the past. So it is not just about passing all of this legislation that we have had in Parliament, rush them through without any safeguards for civil liberties and people's privacy for accessing their bank accounts and other things. It's not just that. But it's also, we've had charges about them photocopying people's files, giving instruction to the Commissioner General whose taxes to write off and who not to go against. That's ominous. Those are ominous things. It is now the return to this all-encompassing for everyone without exemption, even people living in the hinterland, this tax certificate, this compliance certificate. So starting a new business now has a new hurdle. I heard them say they want to cut red tape for business establishment. But if you have to establish a business now and you go into GRA and you're a small person, imagine you didn't pay taxes. Say you live in Mara and you didn't pay taxes for 8 or 10 years. You're a small farmer and you want to establish a shop now. You would have to go and clear your back taxes for 7 years, submit all of these things before you get the license to start the business. And they're saying we want to improve the way people do business, make it easier. They're putting more hurdles now on small businesses too, people who start. What about these young people too? The same young people. So that is why I'm saying it's ominous. No, it's going back to those days. We've seen the army use on surveillance. And we've seen a placing of army people almost in all the civilian agencies. Very ominous against people. And what was the last?
If there's anything in the budget that's good.
Well, I like the fact that they are continuing with some of our projects. And I like the fact that they have retaught now the Amila, and that it's no longer a criminal project, but they are re-examining it. And that the specialty hospital is no longer a criminal thing, and that they're going ahead with it. And I'm glad that the bypass road is no longer not necessary and being held up. And I'm glad that they're going with the hinterland roads too, and with the airstrips that they had cut over $1 billion from the budget. And I'm glad that he put billions of dollars for the continuation of the Chedijagan International Airport. I'm glad about the roads in the hinterland, particularly. We were building a road to connect Region 8 to Region 9, and to upgrade the road in Region 9, the main road, and going south. And we were in the 3 sub-districts in Region 1. We were spending large sums of money on those roads, that they're continuing those. So I'm happy about those things. On the measures, I think they're atrocious. The measures. Anti-development, anti-poor. Forward. Yes.
Finance Minister said the dollar has remained stable at 206. Is that a true reflection when the banks charge 212
Right.
and
You know.
and Gambia?
He wasn't telling the truth.
I haven't changed any money recently, so you would probably be better placed to tell me. But this is the reality differs. This government is living in La La Land. And they're often what they say and what they do has a gaping gap between those two. And much of what I've heard here, like this 28 cents per kilowatt hour that it's costing GPL to generate power now, it is not true. It is absolutely untrue. It is absolutely untrue. So I wouldn't put too much store on the 206 myself, when the reality that people face there when they go into the cambios, etc., is different. And he has now mentioned about the boost that this country got, the $200 million in savings that the country got. In 2014, the fuel import bill for Guyana was $560 odd million. In 2015, it was $355 million. Over 200 million US dollars of savings. 200 million US dollars of savings for the country on fuel import. That's a massive boost to the balance of payment. A massive boost. And he talked about restoring confidence, private sector confidence, last year. Yet, when he came to the capital accounts of the balance of payment, it showed a massive deterioration. But I can deal with that later. I don't want to get into those technical issues at this time. But it showed a massive deterioration. That is capital. The capital accounts is private inflows, private both direct investment, and it is disbursement from loans, etc. That is the capital account of the balance of payment. Yes. Anything? I think it's a disappointing budget. Disappointing. They raised expectations. The president spoke about stimulus. He spoke about a whole range of things. The green economy. They're going to do nothing about the green economy. No stimulus for the private sector. Hardships on poor people. Increased transportation. Pensioners are going to go further into poverty.
No VAT reduction.
Yeah, he skipped the VAT reduction too. Skipped that, you know. Skipped it totally. Thank you.